just because you're living in chaos doesn't mean you have to focus on the chaos.
Situation, this is actually how you get through the mud together and come out better on the other side.
Yeah. You learn from mistakes. Nobody is perfect.
Yeah, the outside world is always going to be loud. It doesn't matter what it is and what it looks like. It's always going to be loud and it's always going to have an opinion. And it's up to you on what you decide to take in and actually let it affect your relationship. Hey Palmr fam, I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Nick.
And welcome back to the Urgent Lows with Palmr, where we talk about lifestyle and type 1 diabetes.
Here, we believe in embracing self-care through life's challenges. Wow. So our last, technically 2 episodes, we had our first guest, Elizabeth from Touched by Type 1. It was amazing. Probably my favorite episodes we've done. She is so inspirational and knowledgeable, and it was amazing. We definitely got to get some more guests on the podcast now that we've kind of broke the ice with it. I know we have a few ideas, so hopefully we will be having more in the future. But it is back to us two for now.
We're back.
We're back, baby.
In today's episode, we are going to be talking about marriage because marriage is tough. T1D is tough. But it's all about how you navigate your marriage and how you overcome all these life obstacles that are just not going anywhere.
Wait, marriage is hard? Oh, man.
To say the least.
And they always say in the first year is the hardest. And now that you've gone through, we're coming up here on 2 years of marriage for us. Would you agree that the first year is the hardest?
Well, I think for us, because we're a blended family, obviously, I think the hardest was our first year of dating and then our first year of marriage, because it was like 2 such different like times in our life. Because dating, it's like, okay, now we're like meeting the kids and I'm learning more about type 1 diabetes. And then like marriage, our first year of marriage, we're living together. We're under one house. Like everything is combined. And I think that those 2 years were the most difficult.
Yeah. So as you kind of said, there's really 2 main, I think, topics when it comes to the struggles that we went through, which is the blended family struggle side of it. And then the second one being the whole challenge of type 1 diabetes, and not just 1, 2 kids with it. So I guess let's kind of talk about the blended family struggle of it. You coming into this family, it was just you and Larry the dog. Larry's the dog coming in the joint. The best dog. We cannot rave about Larry enough. So you joined the family to me and 2 kids. What was your kind of first like thoughts of learning about the different family dynamics and expectations? Like, I guess, like what expectations did you have coming in?
Yeah, so I definitely grew up in a family that were very positive. We support each other. Like, we are a family. We're in this together. We're going to conquer anything together. And when we blended our family, it was kind of like a hit to the gut of like, wow, we have more people that want us to fail rather than supporting us. And what I mean by that is not like our immediate family, even though there are some people in our immediate family, but it's just the outside perception of being a blended family. So no matter if the person knows your story of why you got divorced, of why you're no longer with the kid's mom, what that situation may have been, there is just this component of quote unquote evil stepmom that just surrounds the whole situation. And we've talked about this before. I have mentioned, I feel like Disney really honed in on that evil stepmom. And unfortunately, it's something that a lot of people just have in their mind, and it's just a negative feel about it. So I definitely think it was a realization of like, wow, like there's more like negative things about this than like positive things, right? Even with blending the family and going, like, meeting the kids and learning about them and learning their dynamics and stuff. There's so much of the outside world that's still going on, and it's feeding you thoughts and negative, like, things that it became really hard to focus on, like, okay, who am I as a person? Like, you almost forget who you are as a person. And I mean that as like coming in as a stepmom. I almost forgot of like who I am as a person, who I am to my core, what I believe in, what things are important to me. And I kind of like let it go because I'm like, oh, I need to like fit this bubble and I need to like fit in into everything that Parker, Evie, and Nick already have going on. If I could go back, I would tell myself it's like you can't forget who you are and you can't eliminate who you are as a person. You are adding to the family dynamic. And that's why me and you made the choice to get married, blend this family. And it's really important to not forget who you are to your core and what's important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot agree more with that because it's already hard enough when two very different people, no matter how similar you might be, you're
Yeah.
still very different. You have different life experiences, different family dynamics, how you want to do things, expectations. I think that's a big one, is always expectations, right?
Mhm.
And having two very different people come together is already hard. And anybody who's been married will tell you, yeah, that first year and or whatever, right? When especially when you're living together, so much goes into it. But as you said, we really just felt like there was so much outside forces at play,
Yeah.
and it was hard. And I mean, people, God, always seem to have an opinion. They don't know what's going on. They
Mhm.
want to give you advice. Most of the time, they have absolutely no idea what you're going through, right? Because they've never been in your shoes. They just think that, oh, well, I know how that should be, right? Like, whatever. And it was so hard because, like, people would just get giving you opinions. And like you were saying before, it's like people don't know our story.
Yeah.
It's not like I got a divorce and I went out there with a big flag to release a movie or something that for people to and share everything of why I am divorced, right? Like, honestly, it's nobody's business.
Yeah.
And
And even most importantly, your kids don't know, like,
yes,
what really went down in your marriage. It's obviously not a time and a place to share with your kids. They're young.
no,
It's not something you are going to have a conversation with them. Is it a conversation you're probably going to have with them later on in life? Maybe.
yeah.
Like, maybe if you feel that that's right, but it's not your story to tell them. And it's also not my story to tell them either, which I think is very important. Where I think like a lot of people just assume when you're in a blended family and then there's the stepmom coming into it, it's like they automatically don't like the bio mom. They automatically have it's a competition between the 2. The stepmom is trying to figure out how to outdo the bio mom. I know for me, I was very upfront with you and with the kids of like, "Hey, I'm an addition to your family. I am not taking anyone away from you. I am not replacing anybody. I am literally Rebecca. I'm coming into this family as an addition, and we're gonna figure out together what my role looks like, you know?" And I was
Mhm.
very upfront with that because at the beginning stages when we moved in together, I think the kids had like your kids are very like loving, affectionate kids, right? If anybody knows them, you just know that immediately. Always the teachers are always saying that, like they have so much love to give. And it's a beautiful thing, but when we first moved in together, it started like, I even, like, remember exactly where we were in the house, but they started calling me mom, and then it was like, they called me mom, and then they kinda, like, were silent to gauge, like, kinda, like, gauge my temperature on it, and then they finally were like, "Can we call you mom?" And it was an interesting situation because I was kinda, like, put on the spot right there. It wasn't a conversation where I can be like, "Oh, hold 1 second. Let me go discuss this with your father first, and then I'm gonna come back." So it was really a conversation I was having with the kids myself. And basically, I described it to them the best way I could, and I described my relationship with my 2 nephews. Super close with them. They're the loves of my life. I'm always in their life. I'm always there to help them. Like, they know that, right? And I'm not their mom, though. Like, their mom is my sister. You know what I mean? But I can be a true aunt to them and be an addition to their lives. They call me Tata. And it's just a name that came about when they were babies, and it's ever since it's stuck. So I described it like that to the kids of like, hey, like we're about to build this amazing relationship together. Let's come up with a name that you guys want to call me. Basically, it came up with Beck, which is like a nickname they have for me, and ever since that, it's stuck. But it's just really figuring out, like, it's not about what the outside world is telling you. It's about how you want to approach it and what you feel is right to do. And I feel, and even like when we first started dating and everything, like I get it. I get your family or your friends, people that are super close with you, almost having like an initiation period with me. I get that in a way because they just saw, they care about you. They just saw what you went through with a divorce, and they see that you have these 2 kids with a chronic illness. Like, everyone's on high alert. And I completely understand that, but it's also like there was a point where I had to realize that they don't know everything about me. They don't know me. They don't know like what I'm about. They don't know like my reasoning behind things. And it's also like that is for them to learn over time. I'm
Mhm.
not supposed to come here, oh, I'm a stepmom and here's my whole bio on how I plan on being a stepmom and how I plan to being a wife to Nick.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And I know one of the things that I really kind of struggled with is I always felt like I needed to like prove people wrong instead of like focusing on the marriage. And I feel like getting just kind of distracted at
Well,
times.
I even think, like, that's a good point. Like, I think that, every time we would get pushback on things, you would kind of go in as like, oh, I need to protect Rebecca right now. I need to
Yeah.
protect my relationship with her right now. And then me too. I'm like, you better fight for us. Like, fight for us. Like, fight for me. And that was a huge thing at the beginning of our relationship where there was an extreme disconnect because if you guys know us personally, I am the go-getter. I'm getting the stuff done. I'm not waiting for anyone
Yeah.
to like stand up for me or whatever the case may be. And Nick is more of the wants to think about the situation first, figure out the best plan to move forward and how to approach it.
Mhm.
And I'm just like fiery, like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And at the beginning, I took his lack of like immediate response to pushback as like, oh, he's not protecting us. Like, he doesn't care about our marriage. He doesn't care about me. He's not protecting me in any sort of way. When in reality, no, like your biggest task at hand was to protect our relationship. But again, it's we're all navigating a new situation, and you, the way that you handle it is thinking about it first and
Mhm.
figuring out the best way to approach it.
Yeah, because I'm the type of person that if I just react on the spot, get angry, whatever,
Mhm.
I do not handle things in the best way
Yeah, you
possible.
like pop off.
I pop, right? And I've gotten myself in trouble over time for doing that. But it's one of those things where I know for myself, I need to think about it. I need to sit back, think about what happened, analyze it. I don't always pick up on all of the details or maybe the motives and stuff. And so maybe have a conversation with you on some of it, right? But it also made it very difficult on you because you're wired very different
Mhm.
and you're very quick on your feet
Mhm.
and reactive, and you can handle things on the spot way better than I can. And that was a struggle for us at the beginning of butting heads because I need a little bit of time to think about it.
And I feel like that was a huge point of like, especially like during the first few years, like it took us a few years to really like realize this. Like, I mean, I always knew that about you. I always knew that you're not going to be as quick as something as I'm going to be. And I understood that and I knew it was part of you and it's what makes us different and it's what attracted me to you. And like, it's what built our relationship to begin with. But I think at the beginning, there's so much like going on and there was so much outside forces going on that we put so much emphasis on those things versus like, hey, let's remember that me and you are also in a new relationship. We are also still getting to know each other. We are also still learning our love languages and how to communicate with each other and how to navigate anything. Take aside that you have 2 kids. Take aside that there's type 1 diabetes. Me and you are still learning so much about ourselves, and I think at the beginning, we took it as like, yeah, we know we like each other, we know we work, we know we love each other, we know we're good for each other, so let's focus on all the other things before we focus on fully our relationship, and I wanna say that you said 2 years married coming up. I feel like this time where we're at right now is where I know you so well. Like, I feel like, wow, I finally know him. You know what I mean? And it may quote unquote sound delayed, but it's just the reality of our situation
Yeah.
because we've had to learn so much about each other, learn so much about how we handle things, learn so much about how we communicate and what we need in a relationship first, and then tackle on the kids, then tackle on type 1 diabetes because we were putting everything on our plate at once and it just created chaos for us.
Yeah, and for most people, they date for a while, they get married. Kids don't even come into the picture for years later, and we didn't have that luxury to not have that distraction
Yeah, like,
at the
we
end of the day.
never had the time to talk about, like, what's your parenting style? Like, I mean, you had your own parenting style because you had been a parent for years now. I had never been a parent. I don't know what my parenting style was gonna be. In my mind, I thought, "Oh, well, I'm gonna have 9 months to figure out how I want to parent my future child with my future partner, and we're gonna come up with this game plan together." We had none of that. So, we had a game plan that had been written up with how it worked for you, but we didn't have what worked for me. I think when we would butt heads like that, we would look at it as like a failure to our relationship, but it really wasn't a failure to us. It didn't mean that we don't work together.
No.
It just meant that we need to stop and realize that we need to make a plan for us together versus how you've been parenting in the past and what you've done in the past with your kid.
So, the moment in my head where it became, like, something just, like, snapped and completely shifted, and I think this is when we really got over the hump of things, is we were having a dispute, and you were generally like, why are we acting like we're on a different team?
Mhm.
We're on the same team and we want the same thing. So let's stop acting like we're on a different team and start acting like we're on the same team. And we need to work together to meet the same goal that we want at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that just kind of triggered, I think, on my head
Mhm.
that really got us moving in the right direction at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's just huge, and I think, like, you think about like nowadays, everything is kind of just like, oh, if it doesn't work, just let go of it.
Mm.
Oh, if it doesn't work, oh, it's not worth it. That relationship wasn't worth it. But I think what's a testament to us and our relationship that we have is how hard we've had to work at every single thing. Like, nothing has come easy to us. And I'm not complaining. I love that that's our life and that's our story that we have together, but nothing was easy because I came on this mindset of like, okay, I'm a single girl, you know, I'm successful. I come from a past of like horrible dating stories. You know what I mean? Like just horrible things. In my mind, I had filled it with, well, I need X amount of things to make the relationship be good. And, if there's certain good things, but if the bad outweighs it, oh, it's not worth it. And I know a lot of like, even like friends or people that I knew, like when I was talking to them about like you and your story and the kids and type 1 diabetes and your divorce and all this stuff, it's like, oh, that seems like a lot. Like, that's a lot. Like, are you okay with all of that? Like, and then those questions are you okay with all of that? Then started getting in my head and I'm like, am I really okay with all of this? Like, I don't even know if I'm okay with this. Like, and then that would cause like conflict with us. And But it was because I was letting the outside noises come
Mhm.
inside into me. Like, our relationship never looked normal, if you think about it. It
No, and that
still does not look normal, you know what I mean? And I think back of, like, situations and arguments that we would get into at the beginning of our relationship, and it's like, wow, all of those issues could have been resolved if we could have communicated as a
Mhm.
team versus, like, me against you.
Yeah, and you come and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. I am hurt by this. I don't know what I'm doing. I need you to hold my hand and walk me through it and help me figure it out for myself. You don't want me to tell you how to do it. You need to figure out for yourself, right?" And that is a huge mindset shift for a lot of things. Because I know for me, you are a very, very different person than what my ex wife was in every way possible, right? And I had to learn how to be a different type of husband to you.
Mhm.
The things that I would do and how I would handle things in my past relationship is very different than how you would want me to handle it because you're a very different person. What your needs are, what your wants. You are a very strong, independent woman who has their own mind, who can think for themselves, and has your own opinion.
Mhm.
And that's an amazing thing. That's why we complement each other so well now. But I had to learn that it wasn't just however I was going to do it at the end of the day. There's a shift that needed to happen because you're such a different person.
Yeah. And I think also too, something that's important to bring up is that being in a blended family and being the step parent, I can speak on that, is very lonely sometimes because you go into this situation like I've mentioned, I come from a very close family. We're always together, always doing things together, always loving and supporting each other. Coming into a blended family, like there's already that dynamic going on, right? And you're like coming into that dynamic. You want to figure out how you can improve it or add to it, but you're not trying to change it because it's already there. Like you already have your relationship with your two kids. Like I'm
Yeah.
not going to come in and change that for you. And nor did I want to. But there was many times that, I dealt with the issue of because I'm very fast. I want things done. Like, if I'm upset, there's a reason why I'm upset, type of thing. And I almost started to think of it as like failures for myself, like a failure at being a step parent, a failure at being able to come into this family. And I remember there were situations where quote unquote, I should be there. And when I say quote unquote, it's the outside people saying, like, no, you should be there. Why aren't you at this event or X, Y, and Z thing, you know? And I kept thinking to myself, like, yeah, like I should be there. Like, I know what I do for your kids and I'm married to you. Like, I should be at these events. Like, no one can take that away from me. But then I started to started peeling back the onion and realizing, wait a minute, is this helping me in any sort of way? Is this helping my mental health in any sort of way? Is this adding to my life or is this taking away from my life? So we like halfway through, like I would say, like in our marriage, it's like, am I gonna go to every soccer event? Am I going to go to every sporting event? No, I'm not. Because there may be situations that are already like brewing on the side, and I don't want to put myself into it because in reality, it doesn't have to do with me. Like, it really does not have to do with me. And I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm going to take away from my mental health and take away from my day and just, get wrapped up in my negative emotions. So it's going to be a situation of, how am I feeling? Like checking in with myself. Like, how am I feeling today? How am I feeling about outside forces? Like, how do I feel about this situation and this event? Do I feel comfortable going into it? Do I feel, how, like, really gauge with myself on how I am doing and how I'm going to be able to handle this situation? Because let's be real. At the beginning, I thought we should have joint birthday parties and I thought like these are these very important moments in your kid's life. Like, why are we not all together celebrating it? And why are we not all in the sporting event together? And I quickly realized that no. Like in reality, yes. Is it amazing to have a good, healthy relationship with all the parents involved. 100%. But is it always going to be like that? No. And life has its seasons. There may be good times and there may be bad times. But what you have to remember as a step parent is you're the one in charge of you and your feelings and how you are doing and how you handle things. So that's the only thing that you can control. So it's really like checking in with yourself. And I know that a lot of the times at the beginning, I'm like, oh, well, if I don't go to this soccer game, like I'm going to look bad to Parker. Parker's going to be upset that I'm not going to be there. And I felt like even me and you struggled with how to address this with
Mhm.
Parker. Like, why isn't Beck coming to my soccer game type of thing? And I know you and I struggled a lot because, like I mentioned, I'm like super aunt. So every sporting event my nephews have, I come to it because everybody wants me to be a part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the same doesn't go with our blended family. And in my mind, what I was communicating with Nick was, "Hey, like I want this to be a sporting event for you and their mom to enjoy, right? I don't want it to be this thing of like I don't making anyone feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Because it's an important event for Parker. But then at the same time, like, I still want to be able to be a part of it as well and enjoy on certain things. But we really had to have a conversation with Parker of like, hey, like, certain events are meant for me and your mom to experience with you. Like, Beck will be here when we get home and you can tell her all about it, type of thing. But there was also events that he like went out of his way, which I think kind of got his brain going, right? And I think Parker, he's older, he understands it a little bit more. So when we had that conversation with him, he thought of like, okay, there's this certain event I really want Beck to be there. And I'm going to ask Beck to also be there with my parents. And I think that was amazing for us because it was a two-way conversation that we could have with Parker of like, hey, Beck, I really want you to be at this. This event is really important for me. And I also want you to be there. And I'm like, great. And it already makes the situation, you're bringing in a positive feeling into the situation because you as a step parent, you almost got invited to this. So like you want to be there, you're excited to be there, and you're excited that your stepkids want you to be there.
So the other part of all this is obviously the type 1 diabetes side. Parker is going on 10 years here in a few months. So I've been around this world for 10, where you walked into it knowing nothing.
Nothing.
And I remember the first time that you stayed over and with the kids and all the alarms are going off and all this stuff. And it was like crazy.
Mhm.
So obviously it was very new for you. We approach things very different. Tell me about your experience with, coming into a family, trying to learn everything that we just talked about, but then you throw type 1 diabetes on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've explained it before in other episodes. It's just such a daunting feeling because and that's why I feel like I can relate to any parent getting a new diagnosis of a child. Like, it's just so scary, daunting. You feel like nothing is ever going to get better. Like, this is just almost the end of your world type of thing. And when I went in, it's almost like I got two diagnoses at once. It just startled me and rocked me because I think my immediate being who I am, my immediate response to it is like, I'm going to learn everything about it. I'm going to be a pro at type 1 diabetes. Like, I got this. Like, Nick, you don't even have to worry. If you want to go have game night with your friends when we have the kids, like, you go do I can handle it. Which OMG was I wrong? Like, I can laugh at it now, but I was so wrong, and I'm still wrong. Like, I'm still like we are obviously very much down the road with it, but there are still times, for example, a few months ago,
Yeah.
that you did have a game night with your friends where you went to your friend's house to have a game night, and we did have the kids. And like, now we can kinda laugh about it, but, like, we sometimes feel like we're cursed. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's almost like the diabetes world knows that, oh, Nick is gonna leave the house for a few hours and it's just gonna be Rebecca there and something's gonna go horribly wrong with the diabetes or with the equipment
Yeah.
or Wi-Fi is just gonna stop working or whatever the case may be is gonna happen, and unfortunately, like, it still does, very much so,
Yeah.
and I think I had to, like, pump the brakes for myself at the beginning of, like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 like, I am definitely not gonna learn this in a week, to say the least, and I'm definitely gonna have to figure out what I want to learn and what I feel like is too much for me to take on." And unfortunately, if you've listened to previous episodes, I didn't go that route and I got the shingles and just a lot because we had so many alarms going off at night. I had the alarms on when, it was nighttime and it was just a lot. It took a lot of help from a therapist being like, hey, like, you don't need the alarms on. Because think about when you weren't there and when you weren't living with them, it was just on Nick
Mhm.
to be in charge of the diabetes. And then that was a struggle for me because it's like, well, I want to be a partner to you. I want to be able to help you. Like, I want to be able to support you. And I feel like if I don't have my alarms on, I'm not going to be supporting you. But in all reality, it's no. Like, you know, Nick has 10 years on you on this, right? Like, he can wake up, like, he will be able to wake up, he will be able to hear it without also my phone going off as well. So it's definitely a balance of figuring things out, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and, like, I think pumping the brakes on everything of, like, you got time to figure out what's gonna, like, work for you because thankfully, you're married to the person that knows everything about type 1 diabetes, so
Yeah.
it's you.
And yeah, because you're right. I know what I am doing. And you have to trust me that I know what I'm doing because I know you're somebody who deals with a lot of anxiety, right? And so your anxiety is going through the roof
And let's be for real, trust issues.
and trust issues. That is true. But at the end of the day, your job as my wife is actually not to raise these two kids with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
That's not your number one job. Your number one job is to be my partner,
Mhm.
to be my wife, and to take care of me.
And be the back to the kids.
Exactly,
Back, may
right?
I say, not the best.
But yeah, like your job is to take care of me,
Yeah.
be my partner,
Mhm.
and it starts with me and you being on the same page,
Yeah.
helping each other. And when you by you helping me with type 1 diabetes, it's not you going to do everything.
Mhm.
It's you being that support system and understanding and encouraging and
Mhm.
helping in other ways. So yeah, maybe I'm sitting there dealing with the equipment and things going off, and you're gonna be like, hey, well, you're doing with this. I'm gonna make sure we know what we're gonna do for dinner,
Mhm.
right? And that's a huge help. And but it was that mindset change that we had to get to realize that that's not your job.
Mhm.
Yes, sometimes you're gonna say, "You know what? Go out, have fun. I'm gonna take care of the kids."
Mhm.
Something's probably gonna go wrong,
Yep.
but at that point, yeah, you're in charge of it.
Mhm.
But when we're together, it falls onto me as my number one job.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean you don't step in at times, but you can take that pressure off of you saying, "I don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
I don't have to become the master within a month. It's, "No, I'm gonna learn as we go. I'm not going anywhere. There is time for me to learn it, but thank goodness I'm with someone who knows what they're doing, and I'm gonna be his support system."
Yeah. And I think that this whole conversation that we're having really got prompted by us basically graduating from couples therapy for right now because we all know we love therapy around here and it's our lifeline. But we met with our therapist and she's like, "Wow, they're so like even the way you guys are communicating on this call and how we're talking like there is a complete shift." And she asked us, like, "What do you think the shift was? Like, what do you think it was?" And I think for me personally, it was difficult to answer that question because it wasn't just one thing. But I know, like, a really big thing for me is how I handle things and my reaction to things, and really realizing that that really is the only thing I'm in charge of is my reaction and how I handle it, and me being a sponge does not help anybody, because I can only help myself. I can't help Parker and Evie. I can't even help you. You know what I mean? Even though sometimes I really want to, I can't do it, and I'm only in charge of myself, and I even, like I told our therapist an example. I was like, at the beginning of us blending our family, I would get very upset by the way Evie would come back to our house and how she would kind of like approach me. It would kind of be very standoffish. Like Parker would run to me, give me a hug, like a great big hug, like, hey, Beck, how was your week? Like, I missed you and all that. And then I would get the opposite from Evie. And it would always just like be in my head. And like, it was something that really like bothered me. Like, why does she feel like she needs to, like, approach me after not seeing me for 7 days like this? Like, what is really that reaction? But then the more I really, like, thought about it, like, from an outside point of view, not so much being involved, I even realized she does the same thing with you.
Yeah.
It's just her personality and how she is, and I realized that if I actually greet her how I want her to be greeting me, I get that greeting back from her.
Mhm.
She runs into if I literally I call her Evelita. If they open the door and I'm like, "Hey, Evelita, how was your day?" Like, she'll be so excited, like, runs into my arms, gives me a hug, tells me she missed me so much, and it's just that shift of, like, stop waiting for Evie to give me that reaction.
Mhm.
I confront her and I approach her with that, and that's been a game changer for me with Evie, especially.
Yeah, and it is that proactive, right? And everything we need to do in a relationship in general is about being proactive. And therapy, so many people think that you hear, "Oh, they're at couples therapy. They got major problems."
Yeah.
If you're not in couples therapy, you're not working on improving your relationship. It doesn't mean that necessarily you have major problems. There was times where we had major problems,
Yes.
and we needed it, that somebody to talk sense into both of us and change and view our mindsets. But to us, couples therapy is really about making our relationship better, feeling more fulfilled in ourselves, and improving ourselves to be the best husband and wife that we can possibly be at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so it's so important. And so I know we joked around and like our therapist was like, "Hey, congratulations, you've graduated, right? Like, what's next?" And we're like, "Well, we don't want to stop."
Yeah, I was like, "Wait, wait, 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 you're not going anywhere, like, I
Yeah.
still wanna get on your books for a month out for just me and you to talk,
Yeah.
and then the next month after that, I want it to be me and Nick coming to you and talking." So it's like, no, like, things might be good, and and I think it's also goes to show you that she's such a good therapist too,
Mhm.
because we hadn't seen her in a little bit. I
Yeah.
was
It
it
was like 3
3
months.
months
Yeah.
that she said, and she kept checking in with us periodically of like, "Hey guys, like
Mhm.
how's it going?" And not to be like pushy in any way, not to like get in her books, but it's more of like a reminder of like, "Hey, like even if things seem amazing right now, like you still need to be having these open conversations." And she even asked like one of the things that she thought that helped, and I even said this podcast, like doing this YouTube channel and being able to have a like an open, honest conversation like this, I think really has been a game changer for me because I like to talk about my feelings. I'm a talker. Like if you get me, I'll talk to you about anything. So I really think like having these conversations have been so helpful, and that's what I really hope that can be relayed to our audience too of like, type 1 diabetes is so hard. Marriage is so hard. Blending a family is so hard. Everything is just so hard. You know what I mean? But these conversations don't need to be hard. They need to be
Yeah.
honest. And it's like, even if it sounds messy and you're like, oh, I don't want to put that out there because I don't want people to judge me. It's like, no, this is the reality of the situation. This is actually how you get through the mud together and come out better on the other side.
Yeah, and so I know for me, the biggest takeaway that I got, the therapist had to really work with me on, is actually a mindset change.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that she was complimented about is like, Well, your situation hasn't changed.
Yeah, nothing
Your
has.
your life is still chaos.
Actually, it's gotten even harder because now throw in a whole house remodel that was supposed to happen like 4 years ago is
Yeah.
now happening.
Our life is always crazy.
Yeah.
And for so long, we thought how we would fix the problem is fixing our situation.
Yeah.
No matter if we fix one thing, there's something else that's going to come up.
Mhm.
But what our biggest takeaway that we learned was no, just because you're living in chaos doesn't mean you have to focus on the chaos. You could still focus on what's good, what's positive, and completely change your mindset on how to deal with the stress and focus on our relationships and all that. And that was a massive game changer for me. And that was the hardest thing that I had to learn is no, I need to look at things differently. We wanted to end this episode sharing 5 tips that we wrote down that we thought was a big deal. And we just want to share them with you. And hopefully you get a lot out of it. So, number one is to communicate like it's your full-time job.
Mhm.
Like,
And that's an understatement.
and that's an
That was
understatement.
huge for us because I know in situations I didn't want to bother Nick with one more thing. He already has type 1 diabetes. He has all this stuff. I don't want to bother him with anything. But then I started to realize me keeping all that information in was actually hurting our relationship versus helping it.
Yes. And it's daily conversations, right? You can't just go, long periods of time. It's daily conversation. So, number 2 is setting boundaries, especially with outside influence. That was a major thing in our relationship from friends to family to everything was boundaries. And I was really personally bad at boundaries. I've gotten better, probably still have work to do, but boundaries was a game changer for us.
Yeah, the outside world is always going to be loud. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what it is and what it looks like. It's always going to be loud and it's always going to have an opinion. And it's up to you on what you decide to take in and actually let it affect your relationship.
Number 3 is to educate yourself, but also give room for grace, right? Especially when it comes to type 1 diabetes. Rebecca learning it, she's going to get there eventually. She
Mhm.
does have to know tomorrow, but you also need to allow room for mistakes. You learn from mistakes. Nobody is perfect. So
And
that
I
was a huge one.
and I think this was huge with us as a relationship and our marriage is learning our love languages. Like learning like my love language is words of affirmation and learning that like if you tell me like if I did Evie's hair or something, right? And being like, "Hey, her hair looks really cute." That was so huge for me. Like I would love hearing things like that from you. And it's also being like patient with each other of like learning what makes us happy and what makes us confident in our relationship and what our love languages are was huge too for our marriage.
Number 4 is therapy is not a failure. It's actually an investment.
Huge, huge investment.
Yeah. And people should always be looking to how to get better in what they do.
Mhm.
And therapy is a game changer. It's not the only option out there. But to us, therapy has been amazing.
Yeah, and I almost think of it as like when you go to college, you're extending your education, you're improving your education, you're learning things. And I almost feel like therapy is almost the exact same thing. You're learning so much about yourself, about your marriage, about your kids, everything about your life.
And number 5, it is to celebrate the wins, no matter how small they might be, right? We've come so far. So we need to focus on the now, celebrate the wins instead of trying to focus on what's next or what's coming down in the future.
Totally agree. And we talked about this, even like you telling me like, hey, Evie's hair looks really good. Evie looks really good. That's a win in my book. Like, I'm going to celebrate that. I'm going to tell you thanks. Thanks for that. I love that.
Yeah. So, man, another great episode.
Yeah, I hope you really enjoyed this episode and could get some tips out of it and just hearing our story. And like, I hope when you hear our story, you realize like they're being real. Not everything is perfect. Like, there's been struggles and different struggles, and everyone goes through it, and you're not alone in it. Thanks for tuning in, and we can't wait to see you for the next episode. Bye, Palmer fam.